Welcome to Deep Dive, a sort of personal project that I felt I had to share. I have more than 30 books in queue and probably another 30 topics that I want to learn more about. And sometimes I want to hear a summary before I invest a couple of days of deep dive. This podcast is a result of that need. With the help of some Google apps and tools, what you have here is a podcast format that is surprisingly entertaining, even if it's a bit comprehensive. For this episode, we dive into ancient speculation on extraterrestrial life. So it's mostly from Diane Pasulka. The sources are her books, American Cosmic, Heaven Can Wait, an article on a Substack. Speculation about extraterrestrial life has been around for thousands of years.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a whole stack of sources, ideas you're curious about, and really boil them down for you.
Yeah, get right to the core insights.
Exactly. And today, well, it's a fascinating mix. We're diving into UFOs, religion, and technology.
It sounds like an unlikely trio, doesn't it?
It really does. Our main guide here is D.W. Pasulka's work, especially American Cosmic, but we'll also touch on Heaven Can Wait, her book about Purgatory.
Right, because believe it or not, there are some surprising threads connecting these seemingly worlds apart topics.
So the listeners sent in a great mix of stuff, modern UFO analysis, some deep dives into religious history.
A really rich set of materials. And our mission, let's say, is to sift through it all, look for those underlying patterns,
Yeah.
the beliefs, the cultural vibes shaping how we see the unexplained, and maybe the sacred too.
Trying to find those key takeaways that might just make you rethink things a bit.
Precisely.
Okay, so where do we start? Flying saucers seem like a good spot. Carl Jung, way back, called them a modern myth.
He did, yeah. But then you have someone like Jacques Vallée who comes along later and says, hold on.
Right.
These patterns, these kinds of stories, they show up way before the 1950s. You see similar things in folklore, religious tales, what we now call UFO encounters.
And he stresses this predates the famous Kenneth Arnold sighting in 1947, so it's not just a post-World War II thing.
No, not at all. Which is quite striking, isn't it? That these patterns recur across such different times and places.
It makes you think, are we hardwired somehow to interpret the unknown in certain ways?
Could be. Maybe flying saucers are just the latest costume for something much, much older in our collective psyche, perhaps.
And Pasulka builds on this.
Yeah.
She uses the term UFO hierophanies.
Hierophanies, like manifestations of the sacred.
Yeah, exactly. Moments where something, sacred seems to break into the everyday. And she suggests maybe some UFO sightings fit that mold.
Interesting.
And think about pilgrimage sites like Lourdes, where people believe something miraculous happened.
Then businesses pop up, hotels, souvenir shops.
Right. That commercialism. Pasulka draws a parallel. Places linked to UFO sightings can develop a similar kind of, a draw, a sense that something special is there.
It's a fascinating parallel. The human need to create these sacred spaces around extraordinary events, whether it's religious or something else.
Makes you wonder what the core human need is there.
Right.
Meaning, connection.
Definitely something to consider.
Now let's shift gears slightly. The sources talk about this invisible college.
Oh yes, the network of UFO researchers often operating outside the usual academic channels.
Including these meta-experiencers, Pasulka's term for scientists who study the people having the experiences, not just the objects.
Right, trying to understand the experience itself scientifically.
And it sounds like a bit of a closed community. There's talk of a code of silence.
Yeah, apparently quite different from standard academic ethics. There was even a story about a conference where things got tense because someone breached that code.
It really highlights how this field exists sort of on the margins of mainstream science, doesn't it?
Okay. It does. And that code of silence, it suggests a different dynamic, maybe driven by personal experiences or sensitive info, rather than just pure academic debate.
What does that mean for actually sharing and checking findings, though?
That's a really good question. It could certainly complicate things.
Then we meet this figure, Tyler D. He's described as a meta-experiencer, works in the space industry.
And he's had some pretty unusual experiences himself. Memories that don't quite add up in a normal way.
Like his reaction to the Challenger explosion, it's described as incredibly intense, almost personal, even though he wasn't directly involved like that.
Right. And that other story, about being in some kind of mysterious room.
Yeah, filled with weird energy, he said. He felt it changed him somehow, his frequencies, his thoughts.
These accounts really blur the line between objective observation and, well, subjective feeling, don't they? It's not just intellectual curiosity for him.
No, it seems much deeper. Which leads to the smart room idea he was part of.
Ah, the place where crazy ideas were actually encouraged.
Yeah, the rule was nothing gets laughed at. Even like purple unicorns, apparently.
Which isn't really about the unicorns, obviously.
No, it's about creating an environment where completely unconventional thinking isn't just allowed, it's fostered. And apparently it led to real tech innovations.
It's a powerful point, isn't it? How suspending judgment can unlock creativity. Maybe rigid thinking holds us back sometimes.
Definitely seems possible. Okay, so moving from ideas to stuff, actual objects.
Potential artifacts.
Yeah.
James Master enters the picture here.
A leading scientist interested in analyzing potential non-human materials, but getting hold of them, moving them around.
Not so simple. That anecdote about airport security.
Right, trying to transport this stuff. It just shows the very real practical hurdles these researchers face.
The clash between these extraordinary claims and the everyday skepticism of, the TSA.
But then James decides to basically out himself, right, to go public with his interest in UFOs.
And that leads to a surprising turn.
He ends up meeting researchers who are connected to intelligence agencies, aerospace, people you wouldn't necessarily expect.
Which suggests maybe that interest in this topic isn't entirely on the fringes. There might be more going on behind the scenes in conventional institutions.
Raises a lot of questions about who's looking into this and why.
Absolutely.
And this connects to another concept, anomalous cognition.
Things like intuition, maybe remote viewing, abilities seemingly beyond our normal senses.
Pasulka links this to creativity, even suggesting that some pioneers of space programs, she mentions Jack Parsons, Tsiolkovsky, Chan Sutsun,
Historical figures, yeah.
might have felt they were tapping into something similar, receiving symbolic messages, maybe from non-human intelligence.
It's a provocative idea. And then there are the reports of scientists getting insights during sleep.
Right. It just broadens the picture of how knowledge might even be acquired. Is it all just deduction and experiment, or
Or are there other channels, other ways we access information? It's an old fascination, really.
So, zooming out again, what is the UFO phenomenon fundamentally? Valley's take is really interesting.
The window idea.
Yeah. Not necessarily a solid object, but maybe a window into another reality, another dimension.
And the message he suggests is consistently, you are not alone, but it's tailored, packaged in a way our culture can understand at the time.
So, less like one specific spaceship model, more like different broadcasts on a cosmic TV reflecting our own expectations back at us.
That's a good way to put it. It shifts the focus from what it is materially to how it interacts with us or how we perceive it.
Which ties into that artifact James found in the desert.
Right, the different interpretations. Was it a donation from ETs?
Or, as Tyler apparently suggested, maybe a cover story, given the whole Roswell history in that area.
Exactly. It just shows how tangled the evidence or lack thereof can get. Secrecy, misinformation. It makes it hard to know what's what.
And then you have figures like Scott Brown. He's a debunker.
But also a true believer. It sounds contradictory, but
Yeah. It is complex. He spends his time trying to expose hoaxes, especially now with digital fakes, virtual UFOs.
because it's so easy now to fake things online.
But he does it because he thinks there is something real being obscured by all the noise, all the fakes.
It's a nuanced position, for sure, trying to clear the static to hear the actual signal, if there is one.
We also hear about Alison Kruse. Her experiences are more direct.
Observing and filming these anomalous objects.
And feeling like they were aware of her, disappearing when she tried to film them, things like that.
That adds another layer, doesn't it? Interaction, awareness, not just passive objects.
Raises questions about consciousness, maybe. Theirs or ours.
Or some kind of interplay.
Yeah.
It's definitely part of the puzzle for some experiencers.
Now, Pasulka highlights something she calls book encounters.
The pivotal moments when someone reads a book and suddenly their own strange experiences seem to click into place.
Yes, like Tyler reading Carl Sagan, or another person, Carlos, reading John Mack after his own encounter.
The books provide a framework, a language, to understand something that was previously just weird and unexplained.
It really shows the power of narrative, doesn't it? How stories shape our understanding.
Absolutely. Which leads right into this idea of amplificatory interpretation.
Meaning the interpretation we give a sighting after it happens is shaped by the UFO stories already floating around in our culture.
Pretty much. You see a light in the sky. If you just watched a bunch of UFO documentaries, you might lean towards alien craft. If you haven't,
You might think weather balloon or plane.
Yeah.
Our cultural baggage influences what we see or think we see.
exactly. Perception isn't passive. It's filtered through what we already believe or have been exposed to.
What about synchronicities? Those weird, meaningful coincidences.
Pasulka mentions her own experience, finding a specific Nietzsche quote just when she needed it.
But not everyone buys into their deep significance. David Stinnett is mentioned as being more skeptical, warning against reading too much into them.
Right. That sometimes a coincidence is just a coincidence view.
But then you have Valley and Tyler suggesting maybe these synchronicities do point to something deeper, an informational universe, perhaps.
It's a fundamental debate, isn't it?
Yeah.
Random chance versus underlying pattern or meaning. Where do you draw the line?
And technology and media play a huge role in all this belief formation.
Oh, definitely. Specialist, factual TV shows,
Yeah.
even digitally altered images. That if Star Wars was real, example.
They can plant ideas, shape memories, foster belief almost unconsciously.
And look at fiction-based religions like Jediism. The lines get really blurry between entertainment, fiction, and genuine belief systems.
Media is powerful in shaping what we even consider possible.
It really is.
And the Betty and Barney Hill case comes up again here.
Their book encounter, the hypnotic regression, it highlights how these narratives can be constructed, maybe unintentionally sometimes.
Yeah, how the story gets shaped and solidified over time, influenced by the questions asked, the cultural context.
And documentaries use specific techniques, right? Music, editing, expert interviews, all designed to create a sense of credibility and belief.
It makes you much more critical about how these stories are presented.
You have to be.
Okay, let's look at those parallels Valley draws between UFOs and religious apparitions.
That's a core part of his argument. He notes how people report different things depending on who they're talking to.
Like the Hills sharing different details with different people.
Exactly. And he compares modern UFO events, the lights, the beings, the messages, to historical apparitions like Fatima or Lourdes.
I'm not saying they're the same thing necessarily.
No, but focusing on the patterns, the social effects, the impact they have on people and communities, rather than getting bogged down in trying to prove exactly what appeared.
Thinking about Fatima, the reports mention light, buzzing sounds, weird solar phenomena.
And Valley throws out this intriguing idea.
Yeah.
Could technology be a lens to understand even these historical events?
He brings in Andy Clark's concept of extended cognition.
Right, like how our phones are almost part of our brains now, an extension of our memory, our abilities.
And that example of the Facebook AI creating its own language. Technology taking on a life of its own, almost.
So, could some historical miracles have involved some form of technology, maybe one we don't recognize or understand yet?
It's a wild thought, but it opens up different ways of thinking about those accounts.
And Pasulka adds another layer. Could mass media itself function like a mass apparition?
How so?
By bypassing our rational minds, our conscious filters, and directly influencing our unconscious, shaping beliefs on a massive scale?
Wow. Like a technological version of collective belief formation?
Potentially. It's a powerful analogy for how ideas can spread in the modern age.
Then there's Tyler's perspective.
Yeah.
Quite different again.
He believes the phenomenon interfaces with us biologically through biotechnological antenna.
And that information and matter exist on different frequencies. It's getting into quite esoteric territory.
Very much so. And we hear about Ray's experiences too.
The plasma being encounter that totally changed his life.
And then his wife, seeing similar lights later, but interpreting them as angels.
That's fascinating. The same core event interpreted through different belief systems within the same family.
It perfectly illustrates how our background shapes interpretation, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We also shouldn't forget Edgar Mitchell,
The Apollo astronaut, a credible figure by any measure.
who openly believed in UFOs, extraterrestrials, and was involved in remote viewing research.
He even developed his own model of consciousness, the dyadic model, trying to explain these things, telepathy, mystical states.
We can't really dive deep into that model now, but just the fact that someone with his background took this so seriously is significant.
It definitely adds weight to the idea that these phenomena deserve investigation beyond just dismissing them.
And all this seems to point for some people at least, towards what Pasulka hints at as a kind of new religion centered on UFOs.
Tyler's conversion experience in the Vatican seems key here.
Yeah, a profound religious feeling, but intertwined with his beliefs about extraterrestrials. It suggests this UFO narrative can fill a similar space as traditional religion for some.
Shaped heavily by media pop culture, creating a modern belief system.
And that 2017 New York Times article definitely boosted public interest, didn't it? Made it more mainstream.
It certainly brought it back into the public conversation in a major way.
Lastly, on the UFO side, the idea of artifacts having a sacred significance.
Like the Shroud of Turin in a religious context, these objects hold immense power for believers.
And that story about Tyler's friend dreaming about the desert artifact containing a universe within it.
It shows the deep, almost mystical meaning these potential artifacts can acquire, far beyond just being lumps of metal.
Okay, now let's bridge this over to Pasulka's other area of research, Purgatory. Seems like a leap.
But there are thematic links, especially around belief, materiality, and the unseen.
Both UFOs and Purgatory deal with this question. How can something non-physical or believed to be non-physical have tangible effects or be represented materially?
Right. Purgatory itself has been debated. Is it a place, a process? And you have historical accounts of supposed physical evidence, like burned handprints left by souls.
It's that same tension between the immaterial concept and the desire for material proof or manifestation.
Exactly. And Pasulka's work on Purgatory offers a really useful comparison for thinking about how belief systems grapple with these ambiguities.
Early ideas about Purgatory were tied up with ghost stories, visions,
And potentially used for social control, shaping behavior through narratives about the afterlife.
The very materiality of Purgatory was sometimes a selling point, making it feel real, but also a point of contention.
And interestingly, Pasulka notes a resurgence among some new traditionalist Catholics in focusing on the material aspects, relics, physical devotions, maybe even a more literal purgatory.
It suggests that need for the tangible in faith never really goes away, does it?
It seems quite persistent. Beliefs might evolve, become more abstract, but that connection to the physical often remains or reappears.
Purgatory even used to show up on maps, like Lough Derg in Ireland, treated as a real geographical place.
With its own history of being destroyed and then reappearing because the belief was so strong.
And just like with UFOs, media played a role. 19th century periodicals apparently helped shift the view of Purgatory from a fiery, punitive place
To something more abstract, a state of loss or purification. Shows how cultural forces and media shape even theological ideas over time.
again, that parallel with how UFO narratives are shaped.
It's striking, isn't it? The mechanisms of belief formation and change seem to operate similarly across very different domains.
And even today, Purgatory pops up. Some see it as providing insight into spiritual realms, maybe affirmed by coincidences.
While some Catholic groups feel belief has waned since Vatican II, and of course it appears in fiction.
A Christmas Carol, Sleepy Hollow. It still resonates culturally, even if the strict doctrine isn't as prominent for everyone.
It taps into enduring questions about justice, transformation, what happens after death.
So, wrapping this all together, looking at UFOs and Purgatory through Pasulka's lens, what's the big picture?
I think it reveals some fundamental human drives, doesn't it? The desire to understand things we can't easily explain,
The need to connect with something beyond just the material world we see every day.
and our powerful capacity to find meaning, to construct belief systems around anomalous events or experiences, whether it's lights in the sky or ideas about the afterlife.
Both tap into that deep curiosity about what else is out there or what happens next.
Exactly. They're different expressions of our quest to understand our place in the universe, the physical one, and maybe the metaphysical one too.
Well, this deep dive has certainly thrown up some unexpected connections. We've really only skimmed the surface of Pasulka's work and all the ideas in these sources.
Definitely. There's so much more to explore in American Cosmic, Heaven Can Wait, and the work of figures like Valley, Tyler, Mitchell.
We absolutely encourage you to check them out if this has sparked your interest.
There are many more layers to peel back.
So we'll leave you with this final thought. Seeing these parallels, these echoes between something like the UFO phenomenon and a religious doctrine like Purgatory, what does that suggest about our fundamental human need for the extraordinary, for belief systems?
And maybe what other areas of knowledge, things that seem totally separate now, might reveal surprising connections if we looked at them side by side like this. Makes you think, doesn't it?